Welcome back to the Real Slim Fady Show. I'm your host, Fady Hawatma. This is going to be the story about one of the most vindicating, amazingly sweet moments that I've ever had in my VC founder life. And investors expect you to dance. They make you dance. They make you pitch. They make you do all the things, jump through all the hoops just because they're an investor. They have the money. They think you need them. And for a lot of times, you do need them. And the ones that come back, they sit across from you like they hadn't seen your deck 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they hadn't told you no. And for me, I didn't dance. When I got my moment on this one thing, I did not dance. And this legitimately is the most amazing, vindicating stories I've ever heard of, let alone ever lived. And I'm going to tell you why anyone who's ever been told that something isn't possible by someone who turned out to be absolutely wrong needs to know what to do when that person comes back, because they always do come back. So let me kind of give a bigger picture. I pitched 120 VCs over 4 years on building AI for FP&A. I was talking about AI powered financial planning and analysis for 4 years, pitching over 100 VCs. They all told me no. 120 rooms, different cities, different partners, different people, different associates, the exact same answer, just all in different ways. And let me set up kind of what 2018 actually looks like, because the context obviously matters. When we say we were the first AI company, in 2018, ChatGPT did not exist. OpenAI had just released GPT-1 the year before, and literally no one even knew what it was. And no one was paying attention to it. The phrase AI in 2018 to most investors meant autonomous vehicles, computer vision, whatever robotics startup just got featured in TechCrunch. That was what AI was back when I started Clockwork. What I was building and what I'm still building is automated forecasting. It's cash flow modeling. It's the CFO function completely unbundled. And it's vertical AI in an industry that no one thought was sexy enough to be the thing, finance. The funds I was pitching were calling themselves AI investors. They all had AI in their thesis, and they had AI partners, and they were talking about the future of finance or the future of accounting or the future of whatever industry was hot that specific month. And it was from boutique AI firms to huge firms to someone that just found their first AI partner. And, the ones that are asking you, like, what is your actual model built on? The ones who actually knew what AI, what LLMs were, what machine learning was. And for credibility, if I go back and, we always say we pioneered AI in the FP&A space, and that's true, but there was another company called Data Rails, and they were building in the space as early as like 2015. And what they were building, if it was actually AI, and we obviously know better now in the market, and what they were building wasn't actually the way that a lot of the new generation of AI was. But the category, as the press talks about it now, it did not exist in 2018. And anyone who called themselves an AI investor in 2018 was more interested in a vibe. And now 120 knows. Any founder with a common sense brain cell would say, all right, probably something telling me. But their actions were so much more interesting. There's 3 things they said, right? And each one was more dismissive than the last. The first thing, and this is the best one that I ever got, was this was technically impossible. So those were the 2 words they said. They said technically impossible when I pitched them what Clockwork was doing and how it did it. They basically called me a liar. There were AI investors who had never actually built AI, and they had worked at AI companies or had been familiar with whatever AI that they wanted to do, but they're like, this is technically impossible. And the second thing that they would say was a little more interesting. When they finally accepted that maybe I could build it, maybe I did build it, the second wall went up, where they would say, well, this is not venture-backable. The market is not big enough. There aren't that many customers that would want to get out of spreadsheets and use your software for all their planning. And one firm specifically, I remember this conversation. She was one of the most wealthy partners, and she goes, make this a lifestyle company. Don't raise money. It's not a venture-backable company. Your market is only worth 500 million. It's not worth the 5 billion that you're talking about. Take $1 million a year home, run it as a lifestyle company, and call it a day. And kind of pausing there, looking back now and knowing what I know now, going through the journey, maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. But maybe I should have done that, but it had nothing to do with the real opportunity I was after. They were wrong. The market was massive, and it gets even more massive every single day, every single week, every single year. But I'll come back to that. The third thing that people kept saying, and this is the deepest one, is they weren't just saying I couldn't build it. They were saying that the category itself was confused. The entire financial planning, finance, they would always say finance is an art, not a science. You can't apply AI to it the way that you're describing. And it was a philosophical no. It wasn't even anything about the business or the market. They said this is something that will not happen. That's why they took their stand. And the same people who told me no in 2018, finance was too qualitative for AI, are now in 2025, 2026, wiring checks to companies, wrapping LLMs, ChatGPT around some accounting workflows. And the category they said was conceptually confused is now literally their entire AI thesis. And it's always such a funny thing to see how time progresses and how people change and how the market changes and how people try and react to the market and how it changes. So what happened between 2018 and 2022, I built. I bootstrapped Clockwork. I built without a check from any of those 120 rooms that I was in. I was funding Clockwork with my checking account, with all the consulting business that I had built myself. I was doing that and writing checks for all my employees as we were trying to build what the first version of Clockwork was. First customer was really small. It was literally a tiny little company that sold recycled straws, recycled paper straws. And they let me figure out whether what I promised actually worked. And it worked. And it was amazing. That's a company actually ended up selling because a lot of stuff that we did with them, and we helped them organize all their books and their finances and the projections and all that kind of stuff. And they exited, which was an unbelievable thing. But in my mind, I'm like, duh, I already knew that that was going to happen. But as a founder, you kind of look at it separately. And so the first time that the model predicted the cash flow correctly, it was unbelievable. I was like, this is finally it. Everyone that's been telling me I was wrong is wrong. And I have now a way to prove it and a way to show it to them. And there was a moment when it stopped being a thesis and started becoming a product, like an actual product that worked. And so I bootstrapped obviously my way through it, but I refused to let anyone tell me what I couldn't do when I knew better than they did. I lived in this. I've been a finance guy for a very long time, my entire career. And I have these guys who had never run a company telling me that I was wrong. And eventually we closed the seed round with a top tier VC out of Boston, and they're a real partner, right? They're the firm that I would raise again from tomorrow. And that round brought us and bought us the runway to keep on building and eventually launch into the market. Then 2023 happened. ChatGPT came out at the end of 2022. The AI gold rush had started. And by the middle of 2023, every single fund had an AI thesis. Every fund had an AI partner. Funds that had passed on real AI startups for years were suddenly leading rounds in companies that were literally ChatGPT wrappers, LLM wrappers that were literally built on top of software built in a weekend. And here's the thing. None of those funds who had been telling me that things were technically impossible for 4 years came back yet. They were too busy figuring out what the hell an LLM was, what ChatGPT was. And the texture of those years from 2018 to 2022, imagine you're in all these rooms with all these people that are quote unquote smarter than you or have done more than you. They're all telling you that you're wrong. That time period was brutal. It was lonely. It wasn't glamorous. There was no montage. It was literally just me, a solo founder sitting in my condo, building something that I believed in, trying to convince other people that I was right. While 120 of those people who called themselves AI investors were telling me that I was not just they were passing, that I was actually wrong. And one of the things, like going back to that at the beginning, I said I probably should have just turned this into a lifestyle company. I run a finance and operations company. Clockwork sits inside of customers' accounting and payroll systems, and it tells them how to run their business better. It tells them how to make decisions better. And I advise founders literally for a living. That's literally what pays the salaries of my team members. And that's how it builds the value for Clockwork. The math is the math. So imagine I'm sitting across from you. You're a founder. You've pitched 30, 40, 50 VCs. They've all said no, and you're wrong. And this is why you're wrong. You're pitching the next one. You've taken, by every reasonable measure, the market knows how to send you every signal that something is not right. What would I tell you? I tell you to stop. I tell you to pivot. I tell you what you're trying to do is not worth doing, or else someone else would be throwing you money. And I'd give you the rude awakening that you're probably not hearing it. You're just being stubborn for being stubborn's sake. And this is part where conviction becomes denial. Don't destroy a lot of the stuff for any reason other than the fact that you think you know better than other people. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic, right? The math was the math. And the math says that they were right. I went through all those pitches and the market was not getting bigger as I thought back then. It was kind of like stagnant. First, it was 250 million, then 500, then it hit a billion. And then all of a sudden, people are like, well, I don't even understand what that market is. So when I go back to the actual crux of that, like, I'm not telling anyone to keep going, but I'm also not telling anyone to stop. And I'm telling you, the math is the math. And I'm an outlier. The responsible advice would have been to stop building Clockwork. I got lucky. I know a lot of founders that were as stubborn as I was, if not even more stubborn, and ended up with no company, no investors, no savings, in bankruptcy, completely shattered. I just happened to be lucky and things worked out my way. And I am absolutely the exception and not the rule. So now we come back to the AI investors, right? The 2023 to 2025 gold rush that everyone thought they were going to be bajillionaires. Every fund with their AI thesis, everyone trying to get into the gold rush of all these AI companies. And when an investor asks you what model you're built on, they think AI means LLMs. ChatGPT is an LLM, Claude is an LLM. That's what they think. They missed the 30 years of machine learning that came before ChatGPT. AI is not new. They're not investing in AI. They're investing in LLMs that came out literally 3 years ago. And they don't realize that they're not the same thing. And so everyone watched, obviously, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Square or Block, cut 4,000 people back in February for quote unquote AI washing. It's literally a term now for a reason. The investors who told me in 2018 that finance was an art, not a science, that AI could not apply to the workflows that I was describing, that what I was telling them was actually wrong. Those exact people are now wiring checks to AI accounting tools, to reporting LLM wrappers, AI bookkeeping software, AI close process tools. The category that they were literally saying was conceptually wrong is now their entire AI thesis. So the only thing that changed is that someone else made the work look like the LLM era and they had FOMO. Investors love to be involved if everyone else is involved. So the actual machine learning on the financial time series is the same work that was technically quote unquote impossible in 2018. So when I say most AI companies are wrappers and most AI investors are too, it's literally just what the life is. That's the biggest learning after pitching all these investors and being around this space for so long. I literally, clockwork.ai was the first domain that I bought in 2018. People thought I was an idiot. They're like, AI is the country code for Antigua. People were marking me as spam because they thought I was selling bonds from a third world prince. So most AI companies are doing the same thing, and they were selling the aesthetic. So now, going to my story of the best vindication, the most vindicating moment in my career, in my entire life, when one of those funds came back. And this happened in early 2025, so not too long ago, about 4 years after I pitched them originally. And their feedback was quote unquote technically impossible. What you're doing, what you're saying you're going to do, what you're saying you built is technically impossible. Literally, basically called me a liar. And to level set, I never actually wanted to take another meeting with them. One of my current investors wanted to be helpful, and he sent me a list of funds that he knew, a list of investors that he knew, asking if I wanted an introduction. And they were on that list. And I remember I responded to his email and I said, yes to this one, yes to this one, explicitly no to these people. I said, do not make an introduction to this fund. What does he do? He makes an introduction to them. I don't know where the wires got crossed, but he made an introduction to them. This is someone who literally told me 4 years ago that what I was doing was technically impossible. The finance was too qualitative, whatever you want to say. They told me it basically said absolutely not. And now the fact that they wanted to take a meeting, they were framing this meeting like it was a gift they're giving to me. Like I was the charity case that they're like, hey, yeah, sure, we'll take a conversation with you. We'll see what you've done. And they thought a meeting was something that they could grant. They thought it was literally that I would be flattered that they would take a meeting with me. And the thing that they forgot, or they pretended to forget, or tried to like downplay, was the fact that I met with them and they said no. They said it was technically impossible, because the introduction when you're doing well is a much different introduction than when you need something. So they casually responded, hey, it's great to connect. It's been a while. In my mind, I'm like, you know exactly how long it's been. You know exactly that it's been a while. You know exactly what happened in our last conversation. And I don't want anyone to take a wrong lesson from this, because this is again, the exception, not the rule. When a fund reaches out to you, or you get an option to be introduced to a fund, even one that passed before, you take the meeting. That's the founder playbook. You smile, you take the meeting, you pitch your traction, you tell them what you've been up to, you keep that door open. You can never have too many investor relationships. It's a very small world, and you never know what your next round looks like. And that's the founder dance. And most founders dance, and I dance a lot, but there's a certain limit that I have. And I want to be clear about why most founders dance, because most of the time it's the right call. You should do that. And I do it all the time, because taking the meeting is low. It's a low cost. The upside of keeping the relationship is high. So being polite is literally, in the industry, it's cheap insurance. But there's also a threshold. There's a moment where you've already won the argument and the market has already told them that they were wrong. Your traction has told them that they were wrong. Your valuation has told them they were wrong. And they're still acting like the meeting is theirs to grant. And you're supposed to show up and dance. That's the moment where the founder dance stops being insurance and starts being just bullshit. And once you see that, you have a choice to make. So here's what I did. I chose violence. I didn't pitch them. I took the meeting because I'm not going to decline them, and I wanted to respect my investor who made that introduction. And I took the meeting. And when we got on the call, it was the two founders of the fund, the two managing partners. They had an associate, they had a senior associate, and they had two interns join the call. And it was just me. I took it in my condo in Boston, my apartment in Boston. I took it sitting on my couch. And we get on the call and they're like, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm like, yeah, good to see you. It's been a very long time. And the guy goes, yeah, it's been a long time. I'll actually tell you exactly when it was. You hear him typing, and then he's like, oh, it was 2020, 2021. I was like, yeah, it's been a while. I had obviously looked up our last emails that we had after they made me pitch them on 3 different occasions for them to tell me that it was technically impossible to do what I was going to do. And they're like, awesome. Well, we're excited. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen and share your pitch deck? And I said, no. I said, I appreciate the time. I'm glad that we got to reconnect. But if you guys recall, what you told me was clockwork was technically impossible. Those were the words you used. And they said, well, no, we didn't actually say it was technically impossible. We said that it would take you too long to figure out, because the amount of data that you needed to do what you were saying you were doing was going to be a lot. I said, nope. You said technically impossible. Obviously, with the revenue that we have, with the traction that we have, with the growth that we have, the fact that the market has reached a $50 billion market size, you guys were wrong. And clockwork is actually not technically impossible. And all the new incumbents that are coming into our space, that are trying to do what we've been doing for a very long time, shows that actually it is technically possible. And we've proved it. And clockwork's proved it. The market's proved it. You guys are actually wrong. He was like, well, we don't think so. We thought that you were just early, and we're excited to hear all the traction that you've made. We hear great things, and we want to see if you could share your screen and go through the thing. I said, again, I appreciate it. I'm not going to pitch you guys. What you told me back in 2021, 2020 was that this was wrong. You guys were wrong. The way you approached the entire conversation was wrong. And I respectfully took this meeting out of respect to my current investor, but I have no interest in actually pitching you guys because having you on my cap table now makes no sense to me. And it would not excite me to have you guys working with me to move this company forward. So I really appreciate the interest in me and Clockwork, but I wish you the best of luck. And of course, the looks on their faces, they were like, what the actual, like, who is this guy? Why, like, what just happened? The associates who had no idea who I was, the interns who had no idea who I was, they're sitting there like, holy shit. And the two managing partners, they were the ones with all the bravado. They had all the swag and the confidence to just absolutely shit on a first-time founder a couple of years after literally putting their entire life savings into a company. They sat there and they're like, what do we do? This has never happened to us, because they've always expected founders to jump in through every single hoop and do whatever they wanted to do. And I will tell you what, having that conversation, being able to be in a position of FU, that I did not need them, that I had built a successful business, that I had really, really solid investors. I had great backing. I had great employees, great customers, great everything. And I felt really good about Clockwork. I would not change my reaction to that investor one bit. It was a very low stakes kind of relationship, but it's it's not even that I look at those transactional conversations. It's the way that they structured it from the very beginning was, oh, great, now dance for us. And that's not really not how it works. And so we had that meeting, right? I told them the truth. We had the meeting. You had your chance in 2018. It was their meeting. They were in the same room. They had the deck. They had the pitch. They had the opportunity. They had the market. And they had the chance to do whatever they wanted to do. And they said no. And they didn't just say no. They said, this is wrong and what you're doing is wrong. So I didn't owe them another shot at the answer. So when their faces were like, what the hell just happened? It was phenomenal. And I would not change that for the world. And now I kind of want to go back, like the version of me that refused this pitch. Like I'm in this meeting and I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit to show you anything. I'm not going to show you my deck. The only reason you got my deck is by accident because my investor sent it to you even when I told him not to send it. And the version of me that refused this pitch and the version of me that I'd have advised to stop doing Clockwork, stop building, they're the same person. It's the same engine, same stubbornness, just a different year, different traction, different circumstances. So the reason I said no to this investor isn't because I had it figured out, by the way. It's not because I have this IPO ready company or anything like that. It's because I already had the expensive meeting, the one where I had skin in the game and they had nothing on the line. That was the one where they made a call and I made a call. We both had to live with our calls. They got to be wrong without paying for it. And I got to be right while paying for it with every single thing for 4 years. So whatever they wanted to call this, they schedule a pitch, a reconnect, a catch up, a meeting. It was never going to be that. And because the actual meeting was already over, it happened and it was done. And you don't get a second meeting because the market told you what I told you. You don't get to pitch me because you finally read the deck. You said no, and that was the answer. So I'm going to say no. And so vindication is legitimately a filter. And so why did I say no? Most people listening are going to be like, this guy's an asshole. They're going to think it was about revenge or my ego's too big or it was this founder finally getting his moment and taking it. And I want to clarify, it's not about revenge. It's not about anything around ego or anything like that. I took the meeting. I wanted to level set. It's about fit, because here's what I figured out somewhere between meeting 80 and 120 of no's. The person who couldn't see this when it was hard to see are not the people who are going to see it what comes next when it's hard to see either. Vindication legitimately is not a victory lap. Vindication is a filter. And it tells you who saw it when it was hard, and it tells you who needed the market to do their thinking for them. And the investor who comes back 4 years later isn't a better investor than they were in 2018 or 2020 or 21 or 22. They're the exact same investor. They just have new information that they didn't generate themselves. So the boss who told you that you weren't ready for a promotion and then a year later wants to ask for your advice, that's the same person. It's the same judgment, just operating with a result that they didn't have before. The friend who told you the idea was bad and then they DM you to say, I always knew you figured it out after the launch, after the success, after the IPO, after you sell your company. It's the same friend. It's the same person, the same instincts about you, the same faith, just with a fact that they didn't have before. You don't owe them anything from the meeting. You don't owe them a catch-up call. You don't owe them a coffee. You don't owe them the credit. And it's not anger. It's not anything about that. It's literally information. And here's the part that's super, super important. And because I want to be careful not to leave anyone thinking that this is the easy lesson. Vindication is a filter for them, right? It's a coin flip for us. The stubborn founder who turns out to be right and the stubborn founder who turns out to be wrong are these same founder. They're the same engine, the same blind spots, same market. Market decides who looks like a genius and who looks like an idiot is the same market. And those decisions happen years later. So don't mistake the exception of my outcome for proof of my method. Like, I'm just sharing this story because it was fucking awesome. It was so fun to have that experience. And if you've never raised a dollar, you're not a founder or anything, because this matters for you too. Everyone here has had that moment. If you haven't had it already, you're going to have it. The promotion that you didn't get because someone said that you weren't ready. Then a year later, they're literally hitting you up for advice. The friend who told you your idea was bad, or the move, or the relationship, or going back to school, or quitting the job, then they hit you up to congratulate you after it worked out. The family member who couldn't see the version of you were trying to become, and then once that version of you started working, suddenly they want to be friends again. They want to be close to you again. It's the same situation, same archetype, same answer. You don't owe them the meeting. You don't owe them the catch up. You don't owe them the coffee. You don't owe them the credit. And again, same thing I said about that investor. I'm not angry at them. If I see him at whatever investor, I'll shake their hand, be like, yo, what up? Like, you were wrong still, but what up? This is information about what I saw and what they didn't, and who saw what. They didn't think that they were wrong at the time, but obviously the market proved them wrong. And when you talk about like family and you talk about friends and you talk about the people that you love, the answer isn't always just to cut them off. Knowledge is the answer. So to know who saw you when no one else did, to know who waited for the market to give them permission, and to make different choices about each other or about each group going forward, to be an even bigger bro than the bro who has a podcast. And I'm going to quote Drake, where were you when I was shooting in the gym? Right? That's the information. That's the knowledge. And so anyone who's ever been told that this isn't possible, or you're wrong, or it's very hard, or someone who was wrong has had this moment. The question isn't whether they come back. They will always come back. When you win, everyone will come back. The question is, what do you do when they do? So vindication legitimately isn't a victory lap. It's a filter. So use it. Be smarter about it. The meeting, the conversations, everything, that's the answer. And the answer is still the answer that you had back then. This has been the Real Slim Fady Show. I'm your host, Fady Hawatma, and we will catch you next time.